Who's this? Oh, you're an entrepreneur? Oh, you're a real estate investor. Oh, you're trying to learn from those who did it. Well, come into the lab then. Put your white coat on, gloves on, notepad, and let's build, y'all. Real estate experiment. What is happening, y'all? Today I have the pleasure of having Robert Syfert, which we just talked about, comes from many different areas, parts of the world. But one thing I'm most excited about Robert, having him in the lab, is he is a true embodiment of what an experimenter is, right? So I'm looking at Robert, I'm seeing the companies that he started. I'm seeing that he's a true practitioner in as a real estate investor himself, and he found a lot of solutions along the way to help other investors and build companies from it. So Robert, I'm so happy to have you here in the lab. You definitely, the introduction, I don't know if I could even do a better introduction than you can do it for yourself, just simply for the fact that you have so much going on. And one thing that stuck out to me is, how in the hell did you get realestateinvestor.com? Are you kidding me? Like, that is like, look, let's just open up the conversation. Welcome to the lab, but damn it, man, how did you get that?
Thank you, Ruben. I appreciate that. And that is, for some reason, become the number one thing that everyone wants to know when I walk in a room. And the short, easy version of the story is I got lucky and blessed to get the name, because I eventually, in all those things you just mentioned, I've been through a lot of stuff. One of them was a merger. In the merger, my partner that I merged companies with our software and services, he bought this domain back in the 2008 crash. And the guy that owned it was losing everything. And so he sold it at a huge discount, especially compared to what it's worth today.
Wow.
And so he bought it. And the ironic part to me, when we met, and you'll appreciate being a branding guy and understanding social media, he'd never used the name. He launched the entire business on a different name. And so when we met and we were discussing the possibility of merging our stuff together, and he shared with me, well, oh, by the way, I own this domain too. I'm like, yeah, okay, let's go ahead and merge. And that's going to be our brand name when we're done. There's all kinds of ideas of what we could do with that as far as the community drive and stuff. So it's like, yeah, I just got lucky, so to speak, that he had the name and hadn't done anything with it. And so now we get an opportunity to do that. So yeah.
Well, shoot, I feel that's pretty awesome. And well, shoot, we should feel lucky to be in your presence, because just to put things into perspective, you're the founder of Investor Podio, which I want to hear about that. Property list manager, USA Portfolio Real Estate. You're speaking, you're the host of the Real Estate Investor podcast. With that said, you yourself are an investor. So the question I got to ask first, because the way I create businesses, or at least the way I see opportunities, is I'm typically scratching my own itch. So I got to ask you, okay, tell us which itch came first, perhaps, or which opportunity that you saw. And again, I'm super excited because you're specifically also really leveraging software to help other investors save time. That's one of the things I talk about in my TEDx talk, is how to create more than 24 hours in a day. So you got my attention and the audience's attention. Which itch came first?
The USA Portfolio itch came first. However, there was an itch prior to it, and we don't put the names on there because I don't want no one to go check it all out. There was no brand. So that was the first branding itch when I understood branding. So the first itch was, I spent a decade not doing real estate, but wanting to do real estate, reading, studying. I was the consummate learner, grew up in a great family, get a good job, good grades, and get it and all that. And so I didn't do anything. I just kept studying and thinking I didn't know enough.
What were you doing? What were you doing at the same time? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I got to ask you, when during those 10 years, because that's a long time. And I think that helps put things into perspective for people, because someone who's listening might be in that same situation. What were you doing while you were learning?
So I was doing other jobs, right? And different jobs. A lot of them were in sales. I mean, I've worked for ADT and done door-to-door knocking. I grew to regional sales manager. I've worked in gyms, in the fitness industry. I had a small stint in the US military, in the Navy.
Okay, so you're a super avatar. Basically, there's no excuses if you're listening. You heard gym, you heard, Army, you heard sales, so this is your guy right here. It took you 10 years. It's a great case study.
It took me 10 years to get out of here. It's all in your head.
Totally. I'm so glad you said that. So what was that transition? And then help us connect the dots with that first itch you were scratching. Because how did you make that jump from being a learner to a practitioner?
Yeah, so I got it. The last job I had was working in the finance industry, and they taught me to learn a lot, right? So it was automobile university, always learning, studying, reading books, programs, Zig Ziglar, pump your brain full of good education. Um, and in that, had some private meetings with the owner as we were starting to grow. And there was one thing that he said, and it had to do, really at the core of it, it had to do with focus. And I kept talking about real estate, but I wasn't focusing on that thing. And he was trying to figure out why I had the skill set to be a 7-figure earner there, but I wasn't yet. And he said, I think you're trying to serve two things, and you got to figure out what your one thing is to be successful. Certain he most likely meant, how can we get you to focus on this one thing? I actually walked out of the office that day, and in the worst time of my life said, aha, I finally figured out what I haven't figured out for a decade. I just need to go all into real estate and give it every single thing I have, every ounce of my body and being, burn my bridges or boats, so to speak. And I did. And that was it. I just went into real estate. That conversation, and probably tons of other conversations that were in my brain that I'm not referencing, was the triggering moment to say, go. And I did, and I never looked back. And that doesn't mean as people would think, and then you made millions. Yeah, no, it didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
I actually worked more than I ever thought I would work in real estate. I did make a lot of money. I did have a lot of cool things happen. And I just started wholesaling houses. I didn't know that term at the time.
Yeah.
But that's what happened. And then it just started occurring like, hey, can you do property management? Yes, I can do that because it serves another purpose and helps more people. Yeah. Then that itch turned into something else. And then a couple hundred doors down the road, USA Portfolio got done because I took a look at all that and what I was doing and said, there's a better way to do this. And I could create a brand and actually focus on one part of real estate, which was turnkey real estate.
Oh.
And so that was USA Portfolio. The idea was I will service buyers of specifically turnkey rentals. And so I got clear from a marketing perspective on who was my customer, my avatar. And I want to focus on just that thing and nothing else, and learn, from the lesson I took from going in, I became then, instead of learning all the time, I was learning by way of failing. And so that's my new model, right? I love to read, I love to learn, but I love more than anything to implement my knowledge so that I can learn from the implementation. So I think you learn the most in those failures, quote unquote failures.
Wow. Okay. So you dropped so many gems. And when I said you're an embodiment of experimenter, I meant it. Okay. Because if we closely listen, you said you have to focus on one thing. I'm so glad you went there, and I didn't know you'd go there, but you said I went to real estate, and I was hoping, okay, when you said real estate, what did you go into? Because you said, you focused on real estate, but then the problem is, and this is why we actually created this podcast. I don't know that if it's a problem, it's just a fact that real estate's a large umbrella. Right? There's flipping, there's multifamily, there's short-term rentals, there's wholesaling. I mean, property management. Should I go on? Right?
There's commercial, there's international, there's note buying and selling.
Absolutely. Liens. So I'm so glad you said within that layer, because you didn't just say, I want to focus on real estate. That's too high level. That's actually why we have the show, because then we have people like you who come in and be like, and then I specialize, and then you double down.
Yes.
So super key. Let me ask you though, because I have this theory that this theory from all these interviews that I've had, but I want to hear it from you. How were you able to make the decision to go into turnkey? Like at what point, or was it the wholesaling? Because it sounded like, was it wholesaling that came first?
Yeah.
Wholesaling came first. How did you first choose wholesaling?
I had no money and I needed to make money. I literally was going to eviction court, about to get repossessed on my cars, and had maybe $300 to my name.
Jesus.
And
that came from just deciding to, I don't know if you would call it quitting, or you made the decision to say, you know what, I'm going to focus on real estate. Are you saying that it took some time to even gain traction so that you were in that position, or you were already financially in a tough position? Just to give our listeners some context.
I'll tackle it a little bit more. I actually started taking some actions the year before. I had closed one wholesale deal while I was trying to learn, and I made a little bit of money, and then I spent my rent money on marketing ideas while still working my job. And then it didn't work out. I didn't make anything, or I made a few $100s a couple months later. And I was like, man, this is, and so when he said that thing to me, I have been trying to figure out this, how do I wholesale? How do I
Yeah.
make money out of nothing with real estate? How do I just flip contracts or whatever it is? And so I technically I reverse wholesaled, and I figured out how to find the buyers. I just didn't know the term for that back then. And when I went all in, it was, for me, it was also the click, the shift of, this is why real estate's not taking off, because I'm still working here, right? I think he thought if you just stop worrying about real estate, you'll be 7 figures here. No, I've had
You're like, no. It's the other way
10-year
around, my
itch.
friend.
Yeah, I had a 10-year itch.
Yeah.
You just told me why real estate hasn't taken off. I gotta be doing it all day, every day.
Yeah.
And so that was it. And then instantly, I mean, within days of that, I did close a decent wholesale deal with multiple properties in it. And so I made a little bit of cash, and then I just kept doing that. And then so how the turnkey came about is through that, I said yes to managing properties. And I started looking at the history of the hundreds of doors, and I started flipping some of them so I can make more money, because I learned how to rehab and find private money along the way. And in it, I looked back and I said, man, if I really take a step back for a moment and pause and reflect, most of the stuff I'm wholesaling and most of the interest that's coming to me is rental properties. Now, here's the interesting thing. I don't think that was by accident, knowing what I know now about the brain. My first inclination of what I wanted to do was a Russ Whitney commercial where he showed an example of buying a rental property so that you could make money. So I don't think it's by accident or chance that that's the thing that I consumed my thoughts about real estate with. And I ended up doing rental properties as a niche. I think it just came and it was drawn to me and it was attracted to me. And so most of the houses I was wholesaling were rental properties. Turned me into a property manager. I learned a lot from managing those properties, what was good and what was bad. And then I said, you know what I'd really like to do? I think I can solve a massive problem. I can make way better rental properties if I buy them empty, completely renovate them. So I get rid of all the management issues I'm seeing, move in a highly qualified tenant that has a process to it, and then only manage that stuff. My management will be better. My clients will be better served. Everyone will be happier. And so that's why I chose Turnkey.
Wow. So you're literally redesigning the environment.
Yes.
For you to property manage.
Yes.
Wow.
I saw what
so interesting.
I saw what was bad from a management perspective. What houses are bad? What tenancies don't pay? What makes the customer who owns the house not happy? And from bad experiences, right, quote unquote failures, I learned, well, if I did all this here, this wouldn't even be a problem. What's the root problem to all that, really? And so I went after solving it, and that was I need to stop what I'm doing. I literally stopped all deals I was doing. And I think I was averaging like 20 deals a month in wholesaling at that point.
Wow.
32 is my best month ever. And I was mostly a solopreneur. And I started to build a real business. I started hiring more people and focusing on one thing that I could get really, really, really good at and dial it in.
I mean, Robert, that's crazy. So you're saying 20 to 30, properties a month. Wholesaling, and yet you're saying, okay, this is a vehicle that's working, but you saw another opportunity, because this is, you're basically saying, and sometimes it's important, right, that something's working, but can something else work better? And so did you completely cut that off? Because I want to get into all these other kind of businesses that you built, or was it kind of, what was that transition like? Was it kind of like, okay, let me start wholesaling less so I can focus on the property management, or let me completely have a hard cutoff? You seem to sometimes put the hammer on it and say, this is it. Is that what happened, or was it a slower transition?
There were a lot of not positive things that were happening around me and a lot of stress in all of that. And so I did put I'm stopping everything. I need to take, and I made a lot of money at that point, right? Yeah. And so I was not about to be broke. We were traveling, having fun.
Give us some context for the people, so we salivate a little bit. What kind of money are we talking about here? Like,
we're talking about, in 14 months, I went from eviction court and repossession and $300 in my bank account to hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, because I could make more than I could spend, and I couldn't outspend the money I was making.
Absolutely.
And at that point, the stop was less about the finance. It was about, I was so stressed. And I had a mentor and a coach at the time, and I realized I was outgrowing him and I wanted help getting a new one. And it was, I have to stop, because if I continue this never-ending cycle, I'm never going to get crystal clear about where I actually want to go, because I'm going to
stop. This is so good. Okay, now I got to stop you because that's so good. What you're saying is so good. And it's funny. I have a friend who's, wow, I got to connect you guys, Tampa wholesaler. And he just had the luxury. I think what sometimes is we don't even have the luxury to stop because we're so in the business that we don't get to work, on the business. And if you don't have that luxury to step away to work on the business, then you got a bunch of blind spots that you're not really ever addressing, or maybe your compass is headed in the wrong direction, even when the money's coming in. So I think for us is having that luxury. Give yourself, for all of our listeners, you should be able to give yourself the luxury to stop. Now, how do you do that? You obviously have to put in the work like you did, but then hopefully find a way to just what's the GPS? Recalibrate the GPS, right? So,
reboot your system.
That's so good. It's such a good reminder, even for myself, because you get so caught up, even when you have a good business that's running, you're caught up in it, that you want to make sure that you get the time to step away and look.
Well, here's a good dual test.
What's that?
Here's a good dual test. I wouldn't necessarily do what I did, right? But a good reboot is step away from your so-called business for a week and do nothing think about where you want to go in life. And two things will occur. One, are you freaked out and paranoid because you're away from your business? Because if you are, you don't actually have a business yet. Two, when you come back in a week, you should be very crystal clear about where you want to go. And if the business is suffering because you were gone, again, you don't have a business yet. So I found in that stopping was because I came to a realization, I'm my business. This is not a business. It was my own personal growth. And I stopped because I knew I needed to make a pivot, but I wouldn't be able to figure that pivot out if I was just grinding every day. And part of it was, I actually believe me and my wife went on a trip to the Dominican Republic, and I realized it was the first time my vacations, I didn't realize all my vacations weren't vacations during that 14 months. We made money and we traveled, but I was always on my phone. I was always consumed with the next closing. I was always checking the next email, and I wasn't actually on vacation. In the DR, it's the first time we traveled out of the country, and my cell phone service was off because I didn't realize we needed a different part of our plan. And so I actually was cut off from everything for like a day. And it was an eye opener, like, oh, this is what it's like to actually be on vacation with my wife and actually pay attention to her. I'm doing the wrong things in life. And I catch myself doing that now sometimes. And it's a good barometer for me of, okay, I'm way too much in this business and I'm not enjoying life, which is the intent of why most of us build a business, or what we claim we build a business for.
Robert, so good. I love you echoing these core values of ours. Really, that's why we're here. So let's talk about that. First of all, I really like that, being mindful, being in the present. Mindset is everything, and making sure that you're operating in the right direction. So you went from the wholesaling to then the property management. Do you want to? It sounds like you had a very unique model there, as far as kind of almost like restructuring the asset in itself so that you can properly manage it. Did I get that correctly?
Yeah, you did.
So what did that look like as far as like the next steps, phases of it? And then I want to get into like what you're doing today now actively with businesses.
Yeah, so actively, I had a good coach come in and help me get clear about what I stood for, stood against, what I wanted in life more than anything, paint a picture of what my perfect day looked. And that changed all my decisions in business. I started USA Portfolio, and then I also realized, man, I started this management company out of saying yes to the guy I sold 100 doors to, and that turned into 500 doors under management. And I was like, that's all. I sold it to my partner and walked away and started square from door one. Everything moving forward is going to be in line with what I want to do. And that became we're going to rehab every door. We're going to start a management company with only managing our product. And so I started the whole thing over in that time. And then we moved to Tampa. That's when we moved to Tampa over 5 years ago. And we started building it back up. And we were doing 1 door, 2 doors. Eventually, within a few months, we got back up to 8 to 10 doors in a month and built a process around just that. We weren't wholesaling. We were doing nothing but turnkey. And that's it. And we serviced our clients and continued to grow that thing. That actually opened the next ditch. Because then as that was happening, like, ooh, now I'm in Tampa. I'm in another market. I can expand and scale my business. I have staff, I have VAs, I have people doing things, I have processes, I have systems that are working. And the next itch opened, someone showed me this thing called Podio. And everything I was doing was on whiteboards and Google Sheets and, tracking it in that fashion and what I had learned. And when they opened that door for me, that was like Pandora's box in a good and bad way. I had a great guy building my brand. He looked at it and he's like, oh, I could build out your entire whiteboard spreadsheet business model in the software. I'm like, oh, I'm hip to that.
What was the light bulb like when you saw Podio? Because I know Podio and you can custom build on pretty much on Podio, right?
Yeah.
What was the light bulb for you? Because I think we're listening and we're like, okay, yeah, but where are you going with this? Some listeners might be. What was the aha moment?
I had 7 whiteboards. So I had all my marketing on one whiteboard. I had all my hot leads on a whiteboard. I had all my rehab tracking on a whiteboard, selling on a whiteboard, right? So all these whiteboards, when I saw Podio, I said, wait a minute. And then some of it had to be on spreadsheets because the whiteboards couldn't hold it all at some point, right? And so I saw, man, there's one platform that I literally could someone who knows technology could build this flow and connection so these things flow, and then it also tells the people on my team what to do based on what they do in the business. And so the good thing was we put it all into Podio, and then we were able to break our business, and we were actually able to find holes in our process because we're like, well, wait, that actually is not work smart. We could do that even better and more efficiently now that we have it in a platform where we can see it happen in real time. And Podio allowed us with a bunch of other tools, and tens of thousands of dollars. We got to the point of, man, that person's job, I could actually automate what they do with technology. I don't need them. I just need technology and a couple other platforms to talk to each other and put my voice in there.
Could you give us an example?
Yeah, we'd have a VA that before a sales acquisitions person would go talk to a seller, they would have already had a checklist of running comps, running 3 scenarios, attaching a flyer, putting it all together. However, with technology, I could program those same 3 things to auto trigger inside the software. A VA didn't need to do any of it. I didn't have to waste 5 minutes per lead. The stuff was already instantly handed to my acquisitions, and they could be given it directly. My acquisitions and the VAs together, if they didn't get a deal on the first time, right? You got to follow up. Follow-up's the name of the game in sales. So they got to call them, they got to text them, they got to send them emails. Well, I can connect an email platform. I can connect the text platform. I can connect, the ability to call and auto trigger the message I would say anyways to happen on a predetermined time. And now I don't need the VA. So by the time we finished building out Podio, it was all the follow-up, all the little processes like that could be automatically done, said, or delivered, replaced about $4,000 a month worth of VAs that now technology did for me.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was, but it was awesome. And that allowed me to say, ooh, I could scale this thing. We could go into 12 markets with what we've done now, because now it's ran, and there's one system that could centrally run. It doesn't matter where I'm at. That opened the door to the next itch. In a mastermind, I shared what we had built so that we could scale massively. And we were in 2 markets. We wanted to go into 10 more. We had already picked them out.
And again, this is with the same property management model framework, right?
Yeah.
Where you're just leveraging now technology to really optimize the process. And now you're also sharing this formula with others, and you're getting attention.
That's it.
Which then is leading to the next business opportunity. So let's hear it. You're pitching this at a mastermind.
The next itch became, hey, where did you get that system from? We want that exact same system. There's no system that does that. I'm like, I know. I built it for me. And so serving my own purpose, my itch was, how do I solve these problems so I can scale now and build a franchise model, so to speak. And that opened the door to my tech guy at the time was like, you need to be a software guy. I'm like, no, I don't. I'm a real estate guy. I do real estate. Right. I'm really good at buying and selling houses. I'm going to do that. No. There's a massive need. You need to build a software for everyone. I'm like, no, that's not a problem I want to solve. Till I flew out to San Diego, sat down with them, and they explained exits and recurring revenue models and what software.
And who's them? Is this Podio?
No. I had a tech guy who did my Podio build out for me, but he was also my marketing guy. He's still with me today. He's now the chief operating officer for realestateinvestor.com and the integrator.
And yeah, and I just want to piece it together. So when you went to San Diego, was that to come up with a plan to really custom build this thing and package it, or what was it? Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was him for months telling me. He was my chief marketing officer and the guy that built all my technology for my USA portfolio. And it was him for months saying, you need to build software for your space. Your industry has told you there's a massive hole and a massive need. This is what technology is. And so I flew out to San Diego where he's at and sat down with him and another guy who worked for he's been involved in a few technology businesses and exits. And they sat me down and he said, look, let him look at it and let him see what, and we had already started cloning it and letting people pay us to copy my system, the Podio system with all the 10, 12 systems connected to it.
Yeah, so I was going to say the integrations, right? You really integrated a bunch of things together, right?
Yeah, we had 12 different things. We integrated it all, and we would give them a list, go sign up for all this. We'll integrate the whole thing. Give us 10 grand. Here's your system, and now you've got my system, down to every detail. But we're not managing it. We're not doing it. It's yours. Flew out to San Diego, and they basically explained to me there's nothing like this in any industry. You could build it as your own platform, not on Podio, not with 12 connections. And I saw the light bulb clicked, and I'm like, wow, this is way more massive than a rental portfolio. This has way bigger potential. And I can
technology is, yeah. And yeah, oh man, I'm so excited.
You said in the beginning, you're a tech guy. So I'm like, well, you're going to love it. You're gonna understand this.
It's so good.
It took me getting here to understand the transition I had to go through. But I did. I left there and I said, all right, give me a price tag. Here's the only thing I have. This thing does not get released publicly into my industry until we build the absolute best thing there is. And it can't be what you think it's supposed to do. It has to come from, you have to take my brain of real estate and make that software do what I want it to do, not what you want it to do.
Yeah, for that. So yeah, on the tech side, that's the business requirements, right, of the users, right? Not the technical of.
There's too much tech that is tech built and not.
It creates friction, right? We want to make it easy to use. This is so interesting. I gotta ask you a question because this happened once and twice, and I don't think I don't know if people picked up on this, but I want to highlight this. You've said yes to opportunities twice now. One was property management. Yes. This, yes. How important is it for you to say yes, even if it's not originally your vision? Because it seems like you're doing it as you're an opportunist. And I believe you also call yourself a visionary, which is interesting. Kind of book traction, right? There's implementers and there's visionaries. But you could have easily said no, and nothing happens, and then you don't get to see what the next step is. So for you, are you conscious of that? Of I'm open to seeing what is next, or was that just by chance? Can you tell us what you go through when you're thinking of this? All right, fine, I should consider this. Or do you go through a process? What is it? How does your mind work?
Yeah, in the beginning, the yeses were, that's a possibility for more money. I'm an opportunity seeker, right? And so that's where the process began. As it's evolved, I said, which you may not have caught in that, is I said no for 3 months to the idea of technology. Then I said yes. But
why no? Yeah, go ahead.
Why I said yes is the whole time I was saying no, my brain was saying, say yes, I'm leading you down a path. Now, I'm a big believer in God and faith. And so for me, that's really that was my process, is saying, why am I blocking what's being presented to me as the path and the flow? I like Bruce Lee said it, right? You got to be like water, my friends. You got to flow. And so the yeses are when you want to say no or yes, take a step back. So my process today, I'll give you my process today because it's better now than it was then. Now I take a step back and say, you should say no to a lot of things, but you should evaluate why you're saying yes or no. Am I saying no just because I don't want to take this opportunity that presented itself? So for me, I was simply saying no because I finally thought I had my dream, right? I spent 10 years not doing real estate. Now I'm all into real estate. You want me to go do a software thing? No, I'm not. real estate was what I avoided. I'm in it. And why I eventually said yes is I took a step back and said, real estate opened the door. This is still real estate. I'm not changing my industry, but I don't know what the path of real estate is supposed to be. So why am I just going to say no to serving and helping more people? And so if at the end root of the bottom of that, the ability is I can serve more people in a more massive way, then I should be saying yes, because that opportunity I believe was opened to me, and it's going to keep coming back because I'm supposed to say yes. So that's kind of my process mentally now, is like, why am I saying no? Am I saying no just because I want to say no? Or am I saying no because I'm avoiding the yes I should be taking because I'm afraid of it? And if I'm afraid of it, then I'm absolutely doing it, because I'm going to face my fear and go in. It was the right move.
It absolutely was the right move. I can tell you that. It's so funny because I have actually in infatuation for creating like a, software as a service. That's something that's definitely on, like, when I leave this earth. My background has been in tech with the consulting, etc., and I brought an agile approach to my company. We do the deal, man. You know how it is, sprints and all that. So I've brought my knowledge from that corporate world into my companies. But one thing I always talk about when my close friends are entrepreneurs, business, etc., is to create that, because like you said, like, I'm so grateful for some of these applications that I'm using, that the amount of impact that you can have of people, that's what I'm in the space for, right? Yeah, money's gonna come, right? Like, money is coming, it's gonna come, it's gonna continue to flow as you're adding more value, but the impact that you want to have on others. So I'm so I admire you, and I actually have to give you big kudos for taking that leap. And the keyword that you said is to serve more people, and to fix a problem that was yours, and then sharing that blueprint, which is, ironically enough, is exactly what we're doing with our agency right now, which is, it's just so fascinating to see a proof of concept like you, Robert, taking action and being, very humble about it, your approach. It's really refreshing to hear that as a true practitioner. So Robert, I got to ask you, I'd ask this to somebody, and a high level guy in my network, and I asked, okay, so what's your, and I'd love to ask you as well, what's your framework? Because we have these goals, and we seek them out. Hey, I want to get X amount of properties. I want to get X amount of this. And then we hear so many different opportunities that hit us. And along the way, we're saying, hey, no, stay focused, right? One thing, right? I mean, there's opportunities like no other today before. It's unbelievable. You see the shiny object syndrome. Oh, yeah. So how do you, when you hear something that I'm like, this could be something that we could implement in our businesses, does that go to that, software that you built somewhere as next quarter, or, assign it to someone to look more into it, do a comparative market analysis? Like, what does your process look like when you're getting all these stimulants and ideas, so you can kind of stay nimble as you have these goals, but also stay focused? Because I think there's a difference between being so open to saying yes, like to your point, you said a lot of no's, but then how are you capturing, what is your process for making sure that these opportunities get assessed, so then maybe those no's turn into yes? Do you have some insight you can, give? This is a selfish question, but whatever you tell me, I'm going to share with my audience because they're listening. So what do you got, my friend?
I do. And it's an evolving process, right?
I know.
We run on the EOS traction model, and I will tell you, I've taken all the tests. I am an off the charts visionary.
Absolutely.
I can integrate if I want to, but it's not at all my fun place, or where my creative best is at. Yeah. So I'm best to be thinking of the future and opening myself to every possibility there is. I'm also best in the framework, in a perfect framework, to have an integrator that can implement what's Q3, what's next year, what's never going to happen, right?
So you assign that out completely to an integrator?
Yeah, so I have an integrator who integrates what's appropriate for the business and how the business stays focused. However, and he'll be the first to tell you, I'll throw 100 ideas. And so the process of where we're at now is, now we have an assistant in the middle of us that I can send all these things. And if I feel like No, I really think like this is the thing that needs to, I don't think it's a conflict of focus. I think this is the thing that has to be a part of where we're going. And it's in the vision of the next 3 to 5 years. How do we implement this and when? And you figure that out. Or if I think this is a cool thing, might be a shiny object. I have no clue. We got to evaluate at some point. But it's not triggering a super excitement for me. Our assistant has created a document where we document everything that I throw over, because it wasn't good before. Before it was, I'm sending him 100 emails, and then he's like 2 months later, like, you remember that thing that you sent? Like, this is a game changer. I'm like, what are you talking? I don't know. I sent it to you 2 months ago. I sent 100 more ideas since then. Which one? Oh, yeah, I have it here. It's a saved browser. I thought that was a cool idea at the time. I'm glad you finally looked at it and realized it was a game changer and you need to add it in that solved the problem we had.
Wow.
But now we have an assistant that creates a document that at least documents what category is this idea in? Is it a marketing idea? Is it a software idea? Is it another business idea? And puts them all there. So we have somewhere we can come to and look at. And if anything that I send is a priority to me, then it gets prioritized that, hey, we're gonna have to look at this one sooner than later because I think it's a now thing. May not mean right now, right? I need the implementer because I'm a visionary. So everything's right now, next week, get it done. But there may be like, that may be 3 months from now because of workload, resources, and everything like that.
Yeah.
Sorry, my 3-year-old. So they're asking like, hey, did you already give him? No, I didn't. So give him whatever he needs.
No sweat. All are welcome in the lab. So, wow. So that was that's a big one. What's that?
Usually he'll come. He was up here, but he must have just woke up because
How old?
He's 3. Usually he'll come up here and ask me to pick him up, and he would have said hi to everybody, but he didn't do that yet, so he's not awake enough.
Next time I'll have to pick his brain, right, as well. So this is so interesting. You're literally complete outsourcing that, which is great because I still had my hands on that, but I think that's probably time to okay, interesting. So great insight there. So let's put this thing together. We're gonna put a bow on this one. So you had 12 integrations, you put this software together. I don't know if we talked about this yet. So it's put together, you actually got the cost for it and etc. You package this bad boy and it's up and running live as we speak.
Yeah, so that was investor PO that then evolved into property list manager as another component of the whole global thing. Long story short, I almost went bankrupt and lost my entire life. I've written a book about this entire journey and story because people just see this as the success, right? And no one wants to share the ugly side of following your dreams.
What's the name of the book, Robert?
Who am I am you.
Okay, we're definitely gonna include that in the show notes. Okay. Wow, I love it. Love that. That's a badass cover.
Thank you. Just got the physical copies. It'll be available any day now for actual purchase. Nonetheless, the software, because that was a huge testament of following through with that. Yes. And everyone around me saying, focus, just do real estate, let go of that dream. Stop doing that. It's going to burn you down. And me seeing something no one else could see and suffering through it, which people don't understand. Sometimes if you have a strong enough why and a purpose behind what you believe, I can assure you this, if you continue to persevere in that direction, it will come true. The doors will open, the things you seek will be there. And if it's not supposed to be, it will close itself up. And it won't be some friend or someone close to you thinking they're helping you out by telling you should stop and you listening, because that isn't it. And so that was 2017 when I launched it. Late 2017, we went into beta. 2018, the end of 2017, my son, there's a lot of the story that I'm skipping, but there's a lot of bad stuff that happened in there, but good stuff too. My son was born, my wife was high risk, my turnkey business started to implode because I was building a new business, which is why everyone said, let it go. And I said, no, this is the future and it's going to solve a bigger problem. I'm okay if I lose everything in the process of following this, because it'll all come back full circle. So full circle, I sold that management company. USA portfolio went down to practically nothing and no team members, but this software went live. In a year of it being live, it finally broke through to profit, which proved concept in the tech world, and then started to have massive momentum rolling into 2019 and started to take off, which walked me into the merger of realestateinvestor.com. And now full circle, after going through that merger and learning a whole lot more lessons about myself and leadership and just building a massive team that we have now, and creating all these new processes to manage mental things and a lot of other coaching and high-level coaching, USA Portfolio is back and operational and has been for almost a year with a CEO in place. And I don't do nothing. I literally met with him this morning for breakfast and we had a chat about where he's at. And I see that a whole bunch of wires hit the account. A lot of it's wholesaling, some of it's flipping. It's however he wants to run it. I'm just,
you said it went down for a bit. What did you mean by that? Did you put it on a pause? Or when you went to nothing, you're making any profit? What did you mean by that?
Yeah, I literally, I had 1 year where I still made profit because of the automation. But my entire team, I had a guy stealing from me while I was in the hospital with my wife.
And help me out here, just because I'm keeping track of all your businesses. USA Portfolio, is that the Turnkey?
Yes, USA Portfolio. So USA Portfolio had about a 7 or 8 person team. Outside of contractors and property management.
Right.
Property management was a whole nother company. And it whittled down to losing all those people while building the software and going through my wife's high-risk pregnancy. To that the end, I was down to 2 people left and my wife was in the hospital. We had no family here. So it was me and a 3-week-old baby. And I found out my acquisitions guy was actually stealing deals. And so then I let him go. And then I found out my assistant that was my first hire ever put in her resignation and wasn't doing anything in the system. So I let her go. And then 3 months later, we found out they actually started a whole new company with all of my buyers. And together they went and they were my last 2 people. They started their own company. So in 2018, I probably, and this may sound like a lot to a lot of people, but it was, understand that at the point that I was at, this was not a lot. I probably only made a few $100,000 that year off of my real estate business, which I can appreciate the fact that that's a lot to people, but understand that I had a multi-million-dollar business at that point that crumbled to a few $100,000. I didn't have a few $100,000 lifestyle and expenses, and I had a whole nother business that's taking tens of thousands a month to build.
Right, that's bleeding
out of my own pocket.
So, and would you? What was the? Wouldn't say the. Be strategic and not strategic, mindful of how I use the wording. Not the downfall, but what was that slippage of performance? Was it because you were paying attention to something else?
I would tell you, looking back now, because I had a lot of
reflection.
The book started off as a sob story on stage to my users once this thing took off for the software. And now reflecting on it, writing the book on it, getting it all out of me, I would tell you that the slippage was there and I didn't pay attention to it. It was the thinking I put everything in every person in place and had an integrator that could run it all, and leaving it in their hands and focusing on the software business. So I thought I had it all covered. The reality was I didn't. And I was avoiding, as a leader, the ownership of the fact that it all comes down to me at the end of the day. So I could sit here and blame all those people. However, the reality is I'm to blame because I saw all the red flags. I should have known when and how to step in and fix it. And I chose not to because I wanted so badly to have this software thing take off and not deal with it that I just didn't deal with it. And I can honestly tell you that it was me. I am why it all slipped. They didn't get the attention they needed because I felt like they didn't need it anymore. I was wrong. If I am honest with myself back then, I knew I was wrong at the time and I still didn't do anything because I wasn't a good enough leader at the time to own that.
So hindsight is 2020, Robert. And you obviously, you're literally now benefiting from the decisions that you've made. So what would you have done differently? Would you have delayed the full gung-ho implementation of the software and put things into place right first? And again, that's easy to say now, but I'm wondering, what would you have done differently with the knowledge that you have now, or for our listeners?
I have an interesting perspective on this. I wouldn't change anything of the past because that are the lessons that made me who I am today. Would I do things differently today if I did the same thing? Yes, but I also wouldn't do the same thing today. So
I know
respect,
this is
right?
why it's so interesting, these questions, because it's like,
I
even
would
the
have been certain,
yeah,
I would have been certain that that company was shored up the way it should have been. And there were a couple opportunities back then where that could have happened, and I didn't take advantage of it. Like for instance, now I could tell you, I could go start something else right now. I could leave for 2 weeks from realestateadvisor.com. It's still gonna grow. It doesn't take me.
Why?
Because there is an integrator in place that can run the show.
Got it.
Right. And then last time I tricked myself into wanting to believe the integrator was ready,
but they weren't.
He was ready to try with me by his side. Instead, what happened was he was by my side watching me, and then he said, "I got it," and I was like, "Cool, you got it. I'm out."
How do you know when an integrator is ready?
Do it side by side with them, and you'll know. Is the best answer. There will be a point where you're realizing. So I'm very big on leaders creating leaders. It's a program we're trying to implement internally, and so you have to be. And actually, it's an E-Myth. E-Myth, one of the people processes, is management processes, is to don't just, hey, here's the system, go do it, which is what I've done and most people do. What's better is, here's the system. Do you get it? Awesome. Let's do it together. And let me watch you. And I'm not going to do it. But if you have a question, I may not even answer the question. I may ask you questions. If I'm a really good leader, I'm going to ask you questions to help you solve your problems. And as I can see you continue to solve your problems and build your confidence in your ability to do it, I and you are both going to know when you're at that point of being able to solve your own problems. And then you continue down that path. And I'm here when you have a problem to solve, to let you have someone to talk to. But I'm still probably not going to solve your problem. I'm just going to ask a lot of questions to lead you down the path of solving your own problem, because I believe you have the answers and you're afraid to do it. Right. And that'd be my process today. Fortunately, the integrator I have has been with me for 7 years. So I already know he's got it. He could run it. He just needs me for like, hey, let me bounce an idea off you. Cool. Let's do it.
Wow.
That's it. And he's usually just him voicing through something to say, I think this is it. Yeah. It sounds like you got it, man. Awesome. Glad I could listen. That's when you know they got it. When you're listening and not telling, they got it.
Yes. Make them come up with their own solutions as well to verify. Yeah. Don't give it that. Yeah. Oh man. Okay. I got to ask you this, because, I'm hearing a lot of, things that the Experiment Nation is really deep on, is the mindset, the mentorship, the leadership. Leaders create leaders. I can't believe you said that. That's what we do. Systems. I got to ask you, what source do you go to for that? Where did all this insight come from? You came from humble beginnings. It took you 10 years, and then you just got it. And it didn't happen overnight. It was a process. What and who resources along the way helped you to really become this indestructible specimen that you are, Robert, and then being that leader where everybody can follow? Because I do got to give you credit. I don't say this to blow smoke up your ass. It's really remarkable what you've done and how you've been able to transform yourself, and you weren't born that way. So what are some resources or people that you follow that have given you that kind of framework and mindset and kind of mentorship?
It's a great question. So there's lots along the way at different parts of my life, and we all have that. To name some names in the industry, right? Kent Clothier was the pivotal guy that helped me move to Tampa and get clear about who I am. Tim Taylor, who's retired now, was my first mentor, who helped 6 inches between my ears. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was the first thing, and the thing I studied the most for a decade, and all of his stuff. Zig Ziglar, lots of mental approach there. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, Law of Success, 5 Love Languages, millions of other books that I can't even sit here and give credit to. They're all a culmination of it. However, let me say that whatever anyone believes watching this is your belief, and I'm not trying to change your belief, but I got to tell you mine. I didn't do any of this. I didn't create anything that I have. Nothing that you or I is ever going to create hasn't already been created by someone. We're just giving our version of it today by what we feel and experience. And my personal belief and where this journey has led me to where, and what I believe now, is that all of this was ordained and in my path before I was born. And it's me getting very clear and centered on my purpose in serving God first and foremost in my life and my faith. I believe the more clear and centered I get with that and stop looking for an external source to solve a problem. I'm on a big journey, especially since my son was born. There's a whole story behind that and the blessings and miracles that had to occur to make that happen. But I will tell you more now than ever before, a lot of my clarity is January 1st of this year. I made it a point that every single morning I start with scripture and prayer and quiet time with our Father, Jesus in heaven. And I think he's inside of all of us. And so I do an internal look for that energy, that light that is within us. And I have to be quiet. There can't be distractions. There can't be notifications. There can't be the outside world. There can't be an external book. And I'm getting more and more clear about where is that going to take me and what's the thing I should do next? What's the book I should read if there is one? Who's the person I should talk to? So every morning, I'm just a culmination of feeling like, I'm feeling this pull, which I believe is the way God speaks to us, to talk to this person for some reason. So I'm going to do it. Yeah. That's a lot of people, anyone that's biblical knows there's a great saying in the Bible that says, faith without works is dead. And so what I think that means is we have to have faith that there is a bigger power. You can believe in the universe, whatever you believe in, right? I think we all have some sort of faith or belief that there's something else besides us, a bigger, powerful energy. Yeah. Well, faith is nothing if you don't take steps in that direction. Mm-hmm. I'm just getting way better at listening to I have faith. And if I feel compelled to do something, that's probably that internal thing telling me that's what I'm supposed to do. So I'm just going to follow it. I'm going to implement it. I'm going to take action. And if it was wrong, that's okay, because I think that failure or whatever happens will lead me to the next thing. Yeah. And so I think it's just stop looking for, I've done a lot on this. There's a whole program I'm considering doing right now on, I think we're all looking for things externally, and I don't think any of the answers are externally anymore. I used to. Yeah. I used to want the next good book or the right thing. I don't think there is. I think it's a life journey, and I think it's all here and here.
Yeah, I will say, and to piggyback that point, and the reason why we even do these, I do think that, I love the saying that the universe will tell you its secrets if you listen. And I do sometimes believe that sometimes there's that thing that helps you unlock, where you listen to someone say you should focus on one thing and you're like, okay, oh, wow, right? So I do think sometimes there are external, even things like this, like a podcast like this, you don't realize how much value you can offer to someone that can trigger something that they have to do internally for themselves. Yes. Being trigger points. Yes. So I want to thank you for being that trigger point for not only myself. I know our audience is really going to benefit this, but even myself, I've been like listening. I'm like, oh, that's right. That's so true. And again, that's you representing what you stand for and your mission. And it's so refreshing when you hear that, it's very clear to me what you're doing, your mission, and it comes out so clear, and it comes out as triggers for us as well. So I wanted to thank you today for stepping into the lab. And we definitely, although we're going to do our internal work, we definitely love to hear inspirations from guys like you. And so we'll make sure that we plug your book in the show notes. Check out some of your work, the impact that you're going to have. I got to ask you one last question. I know you're realestateinvestor.com, a real estate investor podcast. But what do you see is next, as far as, again, you might say some yeses or some no's along the way, but what do you think is next for you, man? That way we'll have it here on the air. I'm like, I remember he said it, it was May 28th. He said that this would happen. What do you envision is next for you?
I envision taking realestateinvestor.com to become the one place where all real estate entrepreneurs, agents, brokers, investors come to learn, find where they are, and take the internal journey to fill in all the gaps to where they want to go. I believe we're going to become the community of the entire real estate space that helps you figure out what I just said about your internal journey. And we'll have the tools, services and solutions that you need, so you don't have to have shiny objects. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to learn for the next 3 years. We can stretch that down into a week or days. And I believe we will become that, and will be the most talked about and spread by word of mouth by everyone in this world. And I think it's a kingdom, right? If I'm using a biblical principle, I think that we're going to bring the kingdom back into the real estate industry and get rid of the fake guru-ness that's out there and rampant within our space, and the things that drive people down the wrong paths and keep them away from the things that they went into this business for. And we're going to help make that positive impact in people's lives. And I believe, if anyone wants to hear a monetarily, yes, monetarily, we will become well north of $100 million organization. May not be in the next 3 to 5 years, like I believe, maybe 10 years, but nonetheless, we're going to do that because we will become the place where millions of real estate investors come to learn the right things to do in this space, period. And that doesn't mean just us, right? Because you'll see when we launch the thing we're coming out with right now in our marketplace, that would include people like Ruben in this lab, right? You have something to add that's of value to the real estate space, then we want to promote you through us. What we want to do is get rid of the crap that's out there. That is hey, I've never done a deal, but I know everything about real estate. You $9.97 and I'll teach you everything about real estate. And they don't know anything at all. They can't really help you.
Well, I can't thank you enough for spending your time with us in the lab, and again, being on that mission to, again, very similar ours, really help people as much as possible and continuously learn as practitioners as well. So Robert, any other items that we can leave for the people where they can find out more about what your team is doing? Anything that I've missed that you want to give us a plug to? Maybe plug your book in one more time as well. I definitely want to make sure that's included as there. And we mentioned it before.
Yep. So you got realestateinvestor.com. You can check out everything we're doing in that space. If you want to learn more about me or my book or any social medias that you prefer to follow on, go to robertsyfert.com and you can link out to anything that I do from there.
There you go. You've heard it from Robert Syfert, true practitioner in the lab. And just like that, we are out.